I have a confession.
I'm like, ooh, tell me, what is it?
I have my friend Yesenia here in office, and she has never had a facial.
What?
I know,
No.
right?
Oh my gosh, you guys have been friends for like ever.
I'm like the best esthetician in America, and she's never been to see me.
You are. You are.
But she was really excited by the hydrofacial.
Yeah.
She was like, what's this machine?
It's like a Roomba.
Many bottles. It was like, that's a lot of bottles.
It ensorcels people.
It's like a Roomba for your face. It's amazing. I miss it.
It's totally true. Totally true. In fact, I believe it was last episode that you're like, I miss the hydrofacial.
I do. And I wish that thing you found on the internet was real.
I'm almost 45 and I've never had a facial.
That's okay. I literally still would not have had a facial until I ran into Sybil over a dead body. Is actually what happened.
It's true. It's true. All right. Well, let's get started. Hi, I'm Sybil Solon. I'm an esthetician and spa owner.
And hi, I'm Alex Ellis. I'm a body nerd and wellness expert, and we are business besties.
And bosses. Running your own business, it's hard.
But we're terrible employees, so we're figuring it out.
I've already figured it out. But we're here to share everything that we know about making a 6-figure income and beyond.
Always makes me think of Buzz Lightyear. And be brutally honest about what works and what totally sucks.
I'll be honest, a bunch of it totally sucks. So let's get started.
Yes, it does. I hope too, you, dear listener, dear viewer, also picture Buzz Lightyear every time she says that. It's one of my favorite things. I can't help it. Well, welcome back to Skinfessional. On today's episode, we have not only a wonderful guest, but a really fascinating conversation that I'm legitimately stoked to have. We're going to be talking about how to have an inclusive intake process that considers gender identity, anatomy, and more. So right from the beginning, you're paying attention.
Yeah. And most importantly, how to make clients feel valued and comfortable from the start of the conversation.
Yeah, I think too, it's never too late to start. That's another thing I want to just start the conversation off with, because I know, Sybil, you and I have been talking since June, really.
Yeah.
And we're definitely late to the conversation. I acknowledge that. But I think there's no time like the present to be better and do better and set a more inclusive and welcoming environment, whether it's on your social media, in your office, in your family, in your friend circle, in the world. One person is enough to start to make some change. So why don't you introduce our fantastic guest today, since she's sitting right next to you? Never having a facial. I just can't believe it. Oh my gosh.
So this is my friend, and gosh, we've known each other so long, Yesenia Gutierrez. And we went to school together, but she is a badass attorney who is doing amazing things in the world. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to her because she does an amazing job introducing herself.
Thank you, Sybil. So I'm a diversity and inclusion professional by way of having been a civil rights lawyer for nearly 20 years. The kind of work that I do is really, if you look at the root of it, is looking at how to help people feel seen, valued, heard at their workplaces, and really looking at all the different ways in which that can possibly present itself. And that can be everything from, really where there can be miscommunications, where there can be something more serious happening, to discrimination. But really, I think a lot of that work really transfers to a lot of the experiences that I think clients may face when they walk in the door. So how is it that, your clients can really, whether you be your clients or other estheticians' clients, really get a sense of this place is a place that sees me, values me, and is welcoming to me. And I think that that is all a common human experience. And it doesn't really matter what your identity group is. That is a common feeling that we all want to feel. And I think when you look at that, you don't really need to be of the same identity group of that person walking in the door to understand that that is what we all want.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I feel very strongly about this. Mm-hmm. And I want everyone out there to think for a moment, if you've ever been somewhere and you have felt uncomfortable, excluded, you wanted to walk back out, you wanted to go back in your room, like go back to your car and cry. You knew that you had treated someone inappropriately and you didn't mean to. I want you to take that moment and hold it, because you've been there. And we're going to try to solve that so you never do it again. Okay? That is why we have Miss Yesenia here to handle the situation. Yeah. Okay.
Well, and I'm curious too, how did you, from law school to civil rights to diversity and inclusion, how did that journey happen for you?
Yeah. And I think the journey really, it came through a much more adversarial process. So it came through me suing entities and bringing them to court when they were harming people in different workplace settings. And so I really began my journey first through actually serving homeless families and the shelter system. Then I worked on racial and ethnic health disparities and policy work. And so I ended up really having sort of lots of different trajectories serving other different communities and populations, whether it be homeless families. Then I served people with disabilities. And so I worked with various communities through a litigation work and representation. And I really then realized the commonality in many ways. No matter which community I was serving, the root of that was really that people, number one, obviously, the harm that they were, having was that they were either, being discriminated against, being harmed, being denied their rights. And fundamentally, I saw that repetition. But what I didn't want to be doing was being in such a very high conflict role, like going to court, going to hearings. And I really found that what I enjoyed was working on less high conflict solutions. What I really enjoyed was working on policies, working on mediating conflict. And actually, I enjoyed working with people that didn't, what you would call, quote unquote, the offenders, right? People who didn't realize that what they were doing was causing some conflict. And because I enjoyed that, I actually began to work in-house at several large universities in Oregon. And so as I began to do that, I really enjoyed kind of being in the proactive mode before it became litigation and helping people see the ways in which they may not have realized that they were causing microaggressions or aggressions, et cetera, and letting them understand the ways in which maybe their language wasn't being inclusive, the ways in which we weren't maybe acting even with accordance with our own value system, which I think that sometimes happens. So we think in our mind, I absolutely want to treat everyone with the utmost respect. But sometimes we may have a policy or procedure within our own business, which is actually not doing that. And so what I try to help people understand is, that's wonderful. Talk to me about what your values are. And they'll say, this is my value system. And then I'll say, talk to me about what your process and your procedure is. And they'll say, it's this, this, and that. And I'm like, okay, let me point out to you how this policy or procedure is impacting negatively this group or that group. And what we call in, the jargon of my work is say, let me apply what is called an equity lens to that policy or procedure. And when we apply a lens, this group, whether it be, people with disabilities or, individuals who may be of the trans community, these people are not being valued because this process is harmful. And I'll explain to you why. And so when people then know and they have that knowledge, it's like, wow, you're right. That's not within my values. And it's just helping people be in alignment with their values. Yeah. And I think when you help people be in alignment with what they already want to be doing, that helps them. And so I really enjoyed, and how I came to the work is helping people in many ways be in alignment with what they already want to be doing.
Right. And I remember you at one point told me, and this was a while ago when you first kind of started moving, is you're like, I want to be on the ground floor of fixing people's problems and not being on the top where I'm fighting the people who don't want to be fixed.
Exactly.
And I remember that was really powerful. And I was like, yeah, go do that.
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely, attempting to resolve the problem from the source.
Yeah.
No, it's really interesting. And I know we're going to talk more about like the client relationship, but as I'm listening to you too, I'm thinking of, spa and salon owners who have employees as well. So if you could give like, what's your top tip for how to have like one thing you see happens all the time is an easy fix that employers can make to be more inclusive?
Yeah. So, when you're an employer and you have employees, I think you are responsible for setting the tone and the culture for your business, right? And I think that is, number one, it's very much, it starts at the top and you need to permeate the culture, right? And so if you yourself are not right, for whatever reason, that's going to permeate all the way down. And I think being really clear in your communication about this is the culture of this place, that is really important. So inclusion is something that is absolutely felt. It's not something that you can say. That is something that is people are going to feel it or they're not going to feel it. And so I always tell people it's great that you have a mission statement, that you have this or that. But if you are not, people don't feel it when they walk in the door, and that includes your employees. So you have to actually have that, not just for your clients, but also for your employees. And so something that often fails, I think, no matter how big or large the organization or business, right? If you are not behaving and comporting yourself with your employees that way, that's also problematic. So, you need to be very clear about what your, what your policies are. I am a big fan, and I know a lot of estheticians and lots of people who are in, I would say, smaller businesses, don't have written or things that are documented. And I think that when you have something in writing, there's a lot of power for having it in writing, because it is for you. You are actually saying a commitment to your employees that says, this is the value system of our organization, our business, et cetera.
You would say, write a value system.
Yeah. Right. This is what we say we are about.
Okay.
We are about this. So if it says, we value everybody without, we value everyone. The value system of, Solon Skin Fitness Studio is that everyone is welcome here. We make an effort to make sure that everyone feels included and valued and comfortable. And employees are expected to comport themselves in this way.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because when someone comes in to work for you, you are setting the tone. This is my expectation of you. It is immediately from day one, letting people know you don't do this,
you're out.
Yeah. It's not an acceptable thing to not be this way. Or, if you don't want to be, I believe in giving people chances to, depending upon how egregious the conduct is. It's not about I'm going to fire you, goodbye, but it's letting people know this is my expectation.
Right.
If you don't let employees know what their expectation is, that is where people end up having problems. And that doesn't matter what it is, whether it be diversity, inclusion, whether it be, if you expect an employee to be on time, if you expect an employee to show up for work, why wouldn't you expect them to have this value? So I tell people, when it comes to this is no different than any other workplace expectation. So I say, why do we treat this any different than any other job responsibility? And we're going to have to start treating this like any other job responsibility if we want to have it taken seriously.
Yeah.
So I treat it as a performance measure. And I definitely and absolutely let people know I have it as an expectation. I have it as an expectation upon hiring that they know how to work with people of different backgrounds, cultures, communities. If people don't know how to do that, I will not hire them. And not because they can't just profess I believe in that. I want to know on paper, how have you done that? How have you been adept at that? Because in my background and work, they have to have that. Otherwise, they will fail.
That makes a lot of sense. I completely understand. And it is important, I think, even for small businesses. That is a very powerful tip, right? I would believe that to be true. And when as a small business, I think that we do forget that we need to do those, because I know that we all often are like, I wrote down my mission statement and I wrote down, I wrote down like what I believe for myself, but it is, those values are so important and key. And you're actually halfway there. If you have written down your mission and you've written down what what your goals are and all that, you're like halfway there with this.
Yeah. And I think too, it's more than just putting diverse bodies and faces in your marketing, which I think we've seen a lot of over this year is like, oh, but like my social media feed is like super diverse. It's like, except you have like a toxic work environment that's like awful, And for me, like with my membership, like you're so right. Like you can't just say like, I'm inclusive, it is in how you show up and the language you use and the choices you make. And because one thing I struggle with is like, I don't have an option to have diverse marketing because it's me, myself, and I here in my apartment during the pandemic, And so offering, even just, somebody messaged me like, oh, how would I do this in a bigger body? And I'm like, oh my God, you're so right. Like I should already be thinking about that. I'm going to be more mindful of that like the next time. So I think setting to a stage for those of us who are small business owners of being willing to have conversations without conflict, and that doesn't mean that you have to be like a doormat for people to just like come in and shit all over you. Because I've had people try to do it to me too. And I'm like, hello, goodbye. You are blocked.
That's right.
But to have the environment and let people know, like, I'm here for a conversation, for whatever you need. Like, I'm here to help you. Like, let me know how I can do that. But at the same time, to be, almost like cutting edge with yourself and your values and being, continually moving the needle forward, so to speak, with that.
Absolutely. The moving the needle forward and the receptiveness.
Yes.
The receptiveness that is, and to not be afraid to like make mistakes as you go forward.
Absolutely.
And to also be flexible, because I think that you can also be like, hey, I wrote my values the first time, and you know what, they're fluid. This is a fluid time. You know what, I realized I didn't put this in, I'm not putting that in. Right. You're right. Somebody came up to me and was like, hey, you're not including this. You're like, you know what, you're right, I need to do that. It's time for me to do that. Or if you're like, that is not my value, so that's not me.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about a million times about who's your perfect client, who's your perfect, whatever. It's part of your values as well.
Yeah. And I think too, another easy way to be more inclusive is through language. I was talking about this with another business owner friend who like their flagship program is like a sailing metaphor or something like that. And so she's like, I mean, right off the bat is like rich white people are going to understand what I'm talking about. And nobody have any clue.
I would have been like LL Bean. What?
Yeah. And so, I even think for me, I'm like, oh, yoga, because yoga isn't accessible or a safe or friendly place for all people. So like, how can I talk about that in other ways? So I think, just being really mindful of language. And actually, one of the things we want to talk about today with you, Yesenia, is like how, speaking of languaging, how to be more inclusive, like from the beginning. So the person walks in the door. First time ever. Well, I guess even it would be their first experience with our brand and with our business. But like, where do we start?
Yeah, I think usually it's, the form or intake process. So if you're doing your intake process, I would really consider whether it be a verbal intake or a form process is to really consider how you're doing that. So do you have a binary system listed on there for male, female? I would encourage you to not sort of have such a binary and limited options, to really have an ability to have a non-binary system there, ability for people to identify all kinds of gender identities on those forms. Also being able to list preferred name and legal name so that people can have right off the bat, so that when you're building rapport, you would already now being able to have someone have a preferred name versus legal name on the form.
Even for me, I'm like, I wanted to say Alex, not Alexandra. Please don't call me Alexandra.
Yeah, and you're able to do that.
Yeah,
and it doesn't. And that's irrespective of whether it's a trans identity or not.
It makes no difference. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it makes no difference, and that immediately lets people feel more comfortable. Also, your bathroom situation, letting people know on the form or like when they're first coming in on the intake, letting people know if there is only a single sex bathroom or if there's unisex bathrooms available, because that is a high stress point for people with trans identities.
Okay.
And so that is often something that people like to know in advance so that people can choose. So if they are not comfortable utilizing a bathroom where it is limited to a single sex, they may choose prior to going there to make sure that they won't have a need to use the bathroom during their session, so that they're not, when they arrive there, having that situation. And not to say, remember, these are all generalizations.
Right.
These are not every trans person.
Very powerful information, though.
Yeah, it's just nice for people, more information that they get to have in advance, just the more comfortable during their session or visit with you.
Right.
And then, of course, the pronouns, being able to politely ask someone, what is their preferred pronoun. And, for me, I've always, on my signature line, I always identify what my pronouns are. It says she, her, hers. And I think when you are, just making it part of everyday speech or normalization, my name tag always has, like, I have a professionally made name tag. It just says she, her, hers. Like, when you make it part of, even though I'm a cisgendered woman, like, it just allows for that free flow, like, it's just everyday use. Like, I have my pronouns. I'm asking politely what yours are. It just makes it feel very comfortable. The other piece, of course, which I think is really critical for, people who are in a personal care business, is how do you discuss medical or anatomical issues, because they would possibly impact what you're doing.
So this one's a really big one. So I know that many estheticians, we deal with this. So I know that I've had this happen, and, nobody wants the surprise where you have a client come in and, you've talked to them on the phone and you come in and you're like, hey, so you're coming in for a Brazilian or whatever. And they lie down in the bed and you walk in and you're like, oh, this was not the parts that I expected to be on the bed. And now we're all really super uncomfortable because, like, you were like, oh, and you're like, I didn't expect to see a whatever on the bed. And no one wants to have an awkward conversation. You're already in a weird, awkward position.
Yeah.
And you just want them to be comfortable. You want to be comfortable, and you just want everybody to do their job. Right. And most times the other person has already tried to, like, they usually come in and they're trying to explain to you, but you want them to already be as comfortable as possible. And one of the things I think is hard in our industry is that a lot of the forms online are pre-designed and we don't have choices. So it'll be like male, female, other. Right. Other's so awkward.
It's very awkward.
So awkward.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be other.
Nobody wants to be other.
No, they're not other.
I think to this entire conversation and sort of the larger conversation, Sybil, that you and I have been having this year, is don't be afraid to do things differently.
Yeah.
Make a new form.
Yes.
It's not going to kill you. You can do it on Google Docs for free, and maybe you make a different form and then input it into your computer system. And yes, it creates an extra step for you. But if that means that client sitting in your office already feels more safe, then it's worth it.
Yeah. And you can definitely try it. Pay a coder, guys. I mean, luckily I have one in house, but you can pay a coder to kind of fix some of this. Or, you know what? You just, like me, I actually just do manual intake because for me, I always just found it more personal and it helps me anyways. But so you have a person, you have a lovely person, and you're trying to find out, anatomically what's going on. How do we handle it?
Yeah. I would, and I just, by way of background, just so you know that this can be a very loaded situation because, and again, not all trans people can experience this, but many do, that their anatomical body parts, because many times this is not in concordance with what their gender identity is.
Right.
They may feel a lot of stress around discussing anatomy, is that you can ask them, how would you like me to, I'm going to be discussing anatomy. First, let them know.
Okay.
We're going to be discussing some anatomy, and I will need this information because we're going to be doing a service today that you have requested, like, or just explain the reason why you're asking this,
right.
or this is part of the intake process.
Yeah,
like, just explain that.
Consent.
Yeah.
Right.
Start it right off the bat. And then the next step would be, and I would like to know, how would you like me to ask some questions regarding the anatomy? And what is your preferred way to discuss this? I can ask you the questions and we can discuss it in medical terms, like using medical terminology. We can utilize pictures. We can utilize slang. I'm happy to receive the information in whatever way works for you. And sometimes for people, if they don't, some people can have such stress around it that they would be like, I'll just want to point to a picture.
Do you feel like a person that has that kind of stress would actually come in for a service where they're having hair removed?
Well, it just depends on what it is. Maybe, they are in between gender reaffirming surgery, and they would like the hair removed because they would like it to be more feminized.
Okay.
And so it is possible that is what's happening, and they do not utilize their penis in any sort of...
So it's like the penis is actually very triggering to them.
Yes.
And so that's what we're trying to understand. Like that penis is very triggering. They actually don't even like to associate with it. I'm trying to understand.
But they would like it. They would like it more feminized.
Right.
So it's possible. You know what I mean? So it is possible. And I know a number, within the community, as I understand it and as has been described to me. I am a queer woman. So as, within our community circles and discussions,
right.
as it's been described, they have told me that's just a clit. I like it being treated as a clit. I like it to be described as a clit. And I like only for it to be discussed as that.
Okay.
And so, but anatomically, when as estheticians would be working on it, you know what I mean? I think that is how the hair removal would be working, right?
Right. But if I asked somebody, if I was working with them, I'd be like, hey, I need anatomically, I need to talk to you about your body parts.
Correct.
What do you want to call these body parts? I'll call it Fred if you want. I really don't care. I just need to work around it.
That's right.
And I'm going to have to charge you based on
correctly what that is,
like the size and stuff.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Because I do it ask you based on time mostly.
Exactly.
I'm like, listen, I have a sliding scale. It's based on time.
It's based on time. And exactly. And I think that is really helpful to just ask someone, how would you like to discuss it? And sometimes people have models, like literally you may have a model of a penis and a model of a vagina and be like, which one?
Yeah.
Pick one.
Right. What do you currently look like?
What do you currently look like? What you guys have already said of charging on a sliding scale by time.
Yeah.
That in itself is more inclusive. Yeah. Because we're not saying, well, it's this much for men and this much for women. And if you're like, okay, well, where do I fit in here? If it's just a sliding scale per time, that's such an easy fix on your pricing menu,
Yeah. Well, it's become actually in California, it's actually become illegal to actually charge men and women different prices.
Mm-hmm.
So I've actually always charged by time.
Mm-hmm.
I can't actually say it's time because then people are like, did it how much per minute? And I'm like, dude, you were dramatic as well. So I'm charging you more because you cried. You asked for Hail Marys. And it's whatever my drama is with you is what I'm charging you. Okay.
Yeah.
But that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, so I know more and more estheticians are charging. But the reason why we have a male and female schedule. Yeah. Is because also we just need to know what, I need to know how much time it's going to take, and I need to know am I going to do with balls? Am I going to do with a I'm always dangly bits. Am I going to do with dangly bits, or is it going to be internal stuff? Because
they're different.
Butt cracks are butt cracks. I don't really care.
Yeah.
One's probably just more hairy, but I've seen some very hairy female butt cracks.
Yes.
So but like as soon as I have dangly bits, it's going to be a little bit different.
And they're delicate.
Like they're
put on the thing.
The skin is, Do
you have dangly bits? Yes or no?
Yeah. I mean, really, I like at one point I was like, can I just put, because Nils and I had this conversation a while back, and I was like, we had a friend who was transitioning, and he's like, well, you really shouldn't have male or female on your thing anymore. I'm like, I really just want to know if you have dangly bits. Can I just put like on my thing, dangly bits, yes or no? Like, I don't even care if you're male or female. Dangly bits, yes.
Right.
Yeah. And I think going along with that anatomy, and I this is a question for you because I don't know the answer in terms of this is not my knowledge base, right? Is whether or not hormonal therapy would impact the work that you do.
Yeah.
And like, for example, if you're doing infrared sauna or like light therapies and things of that nature, because I think that is a question that needs to be intaked. And I think estheticians may need to be up on whether or not someone taking tea or estrogen and the basics, just like you would know Accutane or other common drugs. I think this is something that in terms of your inclusive practice, knowing whether or not someone, and this is a question that should be part of a normal intake, because if someone is on, estrogen therapy or tea or testosterone, that may impact something that you were doing to them on the table.
Yeah. And it's actually one of the things that I have on my question list, and I have it with the same question. I literally ask them like, I always ask, are you on any medication?
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I really need to know if you're on Accutane, antidepressants, or any kind of hormonal therapy. Yeah. And I need women, just like regular women who are on like menopause stuff, are on all kinds of hormonal therapies. And so it doesn't really matter, whether where you are in your life. I just need to know. And the reason why is because, your skin can be thinner, can be finer. Your hair can be so much different there. And also there are just some treatments that I just cannot do on you because will act so much differently.
Yeah. So I love you, dear. I'm going to tell you to say cisgendered women instead of regular women. Okay. Just as we were talking about this in this context. And so it is a way because trans women will say we're regular women too. So they're cisgendered women. So they're, as well as trans women or
cisgendered women.
Thank you.
will also be like on hormonal therapy.
Yes.
Like
exactly.
That's totally. They'll just be like, I'm on millions of patches.
Exactly. And that all impact them. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So you have to ask, and I had this conversation when we were kind of prepping, where antidepressant questions will trigger just as hard sometimes as a question of like whether like I'll look at your skin, and I often can tell if you're on estrogen therapy just on the texture of your skin.
Wow.
And I'll be like, hey, are you taking estrogen? And people will be like, oh, and I'm like, whoa. I'm like, it's okay. I just need to know. I'm like, your skin looks like you're on some estrogen therapy. I'm like, it happens. It's cool. It's not. It's not a big deal. I just need to know in this office. I need to know if you're pregnant too. Like,
yes,
a lot of people want to tell me that.
Wow.
I think it comes back to that consent, and I can say as like the client or consumer just saying, hey, so there are some, medications that affect your skin and what I can do for you and the types of things.
Exactly.
So that's why I'm asking this question.
Exactly. Letting people know in advance, because you're setting the scene for people in advance to let them know, I will be asking you some very personal questions. And I want you to know, these are the reasons why, having some transparency around the answers are really important. Like, I don't want to cause any harm to your skin. These are why it's really important. I don't want to have any interactions that would adversely affect you. In order to have the best outcomes for you, I need to have this information. If there's information that you are not comfortable sharing, you can let me know I'm not comfortable sharing this information. You don't have to answer it. But then I would want to know that you haven't shared or disclosed information in this category. And then we can make a decision about whether or not I want to move forward, not having treatment information regarding these categories. Because then you can decide as an esthetician, all right, they didn't answer a whole category of information because they weren't comfortable. But I can decide whether or not I want to go into that treatment without having that information.
That's a great point, because I know there are definitely times where like I can tell that people didn't want to answer that question, and I'll just be like, well, I'm just not doing this treatment, and I'm just going to give them a water facial, and that's that. Because I know that they're lied. It felt very house of that office. Like they just lied to me because everybody lies. And that's that.
Yeah, it's better to just have some transparency to be like, if you want to decline to answer, you can get people to decline to answer, but then say, if you decline to answer, I may choose to not provide certain treatments
For your safety.
And I think it's, to say like, we can have that, and you can just be like, it's for your safety because I'm missing some critical information.
Yeah, I totally dig that. This is a very amazing conversation. I hope everybody out there is finding it as amazing as I do and is learning and growing. I also, one of the things that I want everyone to think about, because I know SDs out there are like, oh my gosh, I don't do any of this, or maybe I do part of this, is when you are doing your intake. I know that I've had this happen. I've triggered clients before, is that you have to remember that when you ask them the questions, that you give them the time to answer. So, so even if you have, I know many people do like an intake, or they don't do it where they talk to them, but they do it on a form, and then they get the form and they look it over. If you have a question for them and you talk to them, give them a moment to actually answer the question. Because a lot of times in person, they will actually answer the question, whereas on a form, they will not. Because they'll have met you and they'll feel safer with you. Right? Whereas like your form on like a screen, and they're like, I don't feel comfortable answering this question.
Right. Where's this going? And
yeah. So, and I know that there are a lot of estheticians who do these online forms, and that's perfectly fine. And then they come in and they just kind of look it over and they're like, oh, okay, fine. And then they just go into the treatment room. And that's why I always do personal one-on-one conversations. I've always found that they just work better for me, because people just feel more safe with you once they've had a conversation.
Well, and you can get more context and stuff, like for my intake, I have people fill out a form online. And then we have a conversation about it. Like, that's the whole call. Cause I'm like, why? I just want to hear it in your words. And literally 100% of the time, more information comes out than what was provided on the form, even though I'm not asking anything different in person. I think for that exact reason.
Yeah. People just feel more comfortable once they've had a conversation with you. And forms are just very like awkward, right? But it's a good way to get a lot of information quickly, right? And it's also a good place to start if you don't, like when I first started, I didn't know my form yet. I totally had just a fill out online form. But now once I've done it for a lot of years, I can just sit down and I ask my questions and I just know them, and it's not a big deal. So one of the things I also want to make sure that we talked about is when we're talking about intake forms, is if you do kind of run into like a speed bump with somebody and they seem to get really uncomfortable with it, is there kind of like a good way to kind of like de-escalate and be like, hey, I'm really sorry. I don't want, I want to try to make you feel comfortable. Is there like some good language for that? Like if you've made them feel, if you can tell you feel like making them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. I think it very much depends on the individual, like what it was that was upsetting. I think always acknowledging is always really important. So just like you said, like to say, oh, I can see that this, what I've said just now may have, upset you. Can we try again? Okay. And I think it's okay to acknowledge when something is upsetting to someone. I'd like to try again, and I think just acknowledge and try again. I think it really depends on what it was, whether or not that's possible, and how escalated the person is. So I think when it's something like, when someone bristles, if you are clear about what it is you did wrong, if you don't know what it is you did wrong, I think I think it's okay to say, I'm sorry, I realize I must have said something that seemed upsetting to you. It would really, I would really like to know, what I did that seemed to be really upsetting to you. I think it's okay to ask someone when establishing an ongoing sort of client business relationship. If you're not going to get that information right there, I don't think it's going to really work to have an ongoing successful relationship. Right. So I think this is a business relationship. I think if the person's not willing to even tell you in that moment, I think it's really hard it's always going to continue. Right. So I think you have nothing to lose in that sense by saying, I'm sorry, I must have said something that was, offensive or hurtful to you. I realize that. And I'm sorry for that, but I would love to know what I did. I'd like to make it right. So I would love to know what it is. And I think always acknowledging, asking if there's something you could do to change that, and that you'd like to set a different tone moving forward. And I think that's always an easier way to, as a path forward. Unfortunately, that doesn't always work. And if it doesn't, I think really...
Well, they're not going to be your client.
They're not going to be your client. I think that's just the reality. They're not going to be your client. I think whenever you're in a situation that I call like an optional relationship, it's not like a workplace where people are really like, you're all two are stuck together. So let's work this out. And there's an incentive because people are like, they're going to continue being work colleagues. And so I have a lot more tools in my toolkit for that because they have no choice but to work together.
Now, would you think it's okay? I know that there are a lot of people who this is very new to them. Mm-hmm. Would you think it's okay if somebody comes in and you're like, just straight up be like, hey, just FYI, I'm new to this. Mm-hmm. If I step in it and I don't know, can you just, I know it's not your job to educate me, but can you just be like, that's not okay. Like, I don't, because I'm not aware of how to, like, I don't know how to treat this yet. And I'm trying to be better.
Mm-hmm. So meaning if the client says it's not my job to educate you.
Yeah, because
I think that's correct. Yeah. I think if they, and I think this is where it is really incumbent upon the business owner to, do some of these things in advance. Yeah. And if the client is like, it's not my job to educate you, et cetera. And, the thing is to say, you're right. But what I would want to do is I would like to know what is specific to you as an individual to help you feel comfortable. So I'm not asking you to educate me on a whole, your whole identity group. What I would like to know is how can I make you as a person feel comfortable? And so I think, what it is, I think people feel exhausted by the thought of like, if people ask me how to make, the world of all people of my particular identity group feel comfortable. But if someone says, how would Yesenia feel comfortable here? It's really important to me that Yesenia feels good here. And what would, that's a really different question. And I think that I hear that in my ears really differently to say, what would make you feel valued and comfortable here? Because it's really important to me that you as an individual feel good in this space because I really value you as a person. That really hears really different in my ears, right? Then I would like you to educate me on every single Latinx queer woman. I'm like overwhelmed. Like, I don't want to do that work and I'm not interested in that work. So, how you come off can really make a big difference. So if you were like, a client, I'm interested in you and you feeling good here as an individual. And that is really important to me. I think they will hear that differently.
I like that because I know that it's one of the biggest things that I have heard from, I think probably you've heard it as well, Alex, from other people, is that people are like, I've tried and people just don't, they just don't want to help me understand them. And I'll be like, I mean, luckily I have people like you in my life. And most of my clients have been when I'm like, listen, I don't know what I did. In fact, I've told the story here where I literally pissed off one of my clients and she dropped me an email about it. She's like, Sybil, listen, I know you've been my client for a while and you really offended me today. And I was like, listen, if I offended you, I literally have no idea what I said, but let me try to fix it. What did I say? I'm really stupid and I will solve the problem. And it wound up being a miscommunication. And I was like, but yeah, no, I could have totally said that. And I am sorry. I apologize. And let's solve this problem in the future. And my clients have always been really great about it, but it's because we have that relationship.
Yes.
Right. And I'm also the first person to be like, so what should I say here? I don't know how to handle this situation because I didn't grow up in a place where people taught me anything.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, oh, well, let me help you. I'm like, but I just care about like what you want me to say for you.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think too of just seeing people as individuals and like Yesenia saying of like, how can I make this right by you? How can I make you feel comfortable in this space right now? Yes. Like, how can I do that? And I think also just like part of my own personal education has been consciously and very intentionally putting myself into positions and places where I don't look like anyone else in the room.
Yeah, exactly.
Whether, it's conversations or media or, podcasts or books or whatever, and entering those spaces knowing full well they are not for me. I am not there to even participate in the discussion. Like I'm purely there to listen and learn and take something from that and just add it to my own experience.
That's true. And guys, remember, there are books. I'm the first person to say everything on the internet is not true. So ask your friends and colleagues for recommendations on books. Books are amazing. There's a library out there that will help you.
What's that? I don't even know.
It will help you for free, even. So and I'm the first person to always say, "Hey, books are amazing. They're fantastic.
They totally are." I'm trying to figure out what is. Was it on HBO? Just had a documentary about that Laverne Cox did about trans in Hollywood representation.
I have not heard of that one, so I don't know.
You need to watch. I'm trying to Google it right now. Laverne Cox. It was so phenomenal because even just like our conversation today with you, Yesenia, there's stuff like I hadn't even considered of like the stress about the bathroom situation. You know, like, oh shoot, of course, like that totally makes sense. It's called Disclosure. And that's why it didn't come up. It's on Netflix. It's called Disclosure. I highly recommend it because like Hollywood speaking, the very first movie ever had a trans person in it, or like trans representation by, a cisgender person. I'm like, oh wow, like this isn't anything new at all. Whether you have been exposed to it or not is like, doesn't mean that it's just this hot new thing that everyone's like jumping on the bandwagon. So yeah, watch movies, read books, listen to podcasts. In social media, there's ways to like, go check out accounts of people who don't look like you, follow them, read the conversations. It doesn't mean you have to engage. 'Cause again, a lot of these spaces, they are not for you.
No,
but you can be compassionate and empathetic, and you can learn by immersing yourself.
Yeah. So I'm looking at our show notes, and I think one of the only things that we kind of haven't made sure that we really touched on is that, and Yesenia did a little bit, but I want to make sure that we really bring it home, is that pronouns, using the use of pronouns. I noticed that more and more bios are doing it, that people are, the use of pronouns is, we are doing it because it's normalizing it for everyone. It also just makes it easier for everyone to kind of understand who you are, what you're about, and for everything to just be kind of on an even footing, right? And so if you are not using pronouns, or you don't know what pronouns are, or if you don't know what your pronouns are, that's cool, but go educate yourself. Go sort it. Go learn about it, right?
Yeah.
It's cool. So one of your homeworks, because, we always give people homework, is go throw some pronouns up on your IG account.
And also,
I know we have very few little letters, but go do it.
Yeah.
Right? I want to see some pronouns thrown out there. I know that we just joined Clubhouse, and I know that Alex there, what had some pronouns up there. I was super proud.
Yeah. Well, they're in my IG bio too, but to be honest, sometimes they do have to get the boot for,
because we don't have the room. I know. I had them up on mine, I think last month, and then I just had to take them down because I ran out of space again.
But like the email signature, duh. I hadn't even thought about it. Duh.
Yeah. Throw it in. Throw up your pronouns, and if your pronouns are fluid, that's cool too.
Yeah.
Find your place.
But I think too, as let's talk about privilege. It's disgusting, cisgendered, able-bodied, like thin, like all of the shit. I'm like, I have it. It's up to me to, put pronouns and to be thinking of other, like how I can make things more inclusive, rather than like, oh, you have to figure it out for yourself, So whatever privilege you have, even if you are in, a person of color, or, different housing situations, like whatever your background is, it's like almost like extending an olive branch and like rolling out the red carpet for someone who isn't, is marginalized in some aspect, and like, here, let me make it just 1% more comfortable, because that is something that I can do.
It's a great way of saying it, Alex.
Yeah, that's we keep Alex around. She's lovely. Right?
Roll out that red carpet. I love that.
It's just that one thing to say, hey, I see you.
Yeah.
I see you. I'm working towards it, and I'm trying to like get with the program.
Yeah. And it helps us also remember to not assume anyone else's identity, like gender identity, like.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. Okay. All right, guys. So I think we rocked it. I think I want to thank Yesenia for coming in and doing this last minute. I literally jumped on her last night when she flew in. I was like, I'd like you to be on my podcast show because I think you're amazing.
You.
And I think you talk about things that need to be talked about that Alex and I can't talk about by ourselves.
No, this was a super helpful conversation. And
thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that you.
I know. Okay, guys. So you can find us in all the places. Alex, roll us out.
Well, send us a DM, your questions. Tell us what changes you are going to be making to your intake process to be more inclusive and make people feel welcome. So hit us up on Instagram. The show is at Skinfessional. Sybil is at Your Skin Fitness Expert. Yesenia, are you up on the socials? What's your social?
Oh, I am
LinkedIn or
I'm on LinkedIn.
I'm not here. No.
I'm on LinkedIn.
In fact, if you decide you need to, have somebody, you need to hire somebody to do this for you. She's currently, looking for a gig, but she'll take gigs if you need, help, I'm sure now.
I'm on LinkedIn. Yeah.
I'm on LinkedIn.
We'll link to your LinkedIn.
Yes. That's right.
Is that how it works?
That's right. I'm at LinkedIn.
Love it. Which actually is the hopping new place.
It's actually been hopping for like 3 years.
I know.
So, but now people are like, oh, the algorithm. Now we've just understood the algorithm.
I know. Or you can give us a ring-a-ling into our box.
Wait, actually, Alex is at Holla.
Oh, I'm at Holla from Holla. I forgot. I just got
Oh my gosh, wait. And I also wanted to talk about, so last week we did have a couple, I had like 3 or 4 conversations about how we use the infrared.
I'm just jealous everyone has an infrared blanket and I don't. Okay. I have
Me neither. I want one.
Okay, so I use these Comfy Co blankets.
Mm-hmm. Is it a blanket or a sheet?
They're little sheets that are towels on one side. And they're like almost, they're soft, kind of like plasticky on the other, but they don't they keep the sweat from going through. And I'll do like a whole IG on our thing, but I wanted to show them here as well.
You know, their line is developed for spa, designed for
yes. But I love my Comfy Co, as you all know. My whole spa is Comfy Co. Yeah. So there you have it. So, but I wanted to make sure I talked about that as well. Yeah. Okay, and we have a Skinfessional box that you can always find us on. It's at 818-473-5277. So guys, until next week,
keep your secrets to yourself.
Unless you're telling us.
Bye.
Bye.